Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy, powered by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart, Ralph O'Brien, and Dr. Kay Royal.
Hello, everyone. This is Sunny DeHaye calling, and yes, that means that we are back in Europe. Although we're also still in Washington, D.C., as you will hear later this episode, but it's also high time for Kay and myself to catch up with Ralph. So without further ado, my name is Paul Breitbart.
My name is Ralph O'Brien.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So I'm trying to find a question. Oh, here we go. Would you rather read the end of every book or always forget the story's ending?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I get quite emotional when I finish books. I experience a sense of loss. It's great when there's another book in the series, but if it's like the last book or I've got to wait forever till the next one in the series, I actually find getting to the end of the book quite emotional. I feel like a sense of loss, they become emotional because I've got attached to the characters or something. So I think that pretty much answers the question, right? Would I forget the ending? I'm not sure, but certainly regret getting to the end of nearly every single novel I read.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's not from every single book I read. So there are books where I think, okay, it's fine, it's done. Next, I continue reading the next book. But indeed, there are books where I think I wouldn't have minded was another 100 or 200 or 1,000 pages and would just continue the storyline.
Yeah.
But I do believe that I'm the one actually forgetting the storyline of books that I have read. So probably that is what I would pick. The advantage is that you can then also reread books without knowing every single detail again.
I do that with books and movies. I forget the exact storyline. Yes, I know it's a movie and in the end, they all live happily ever after. But I forget the interactions and everything in between of exactly who did what and whatever. Oh, yeah, I forgot what happened in this movie. Okay, or that happened in this book. So I'm rereading one of my favorite series right now. I like to go back and do that. A lot of people binge watch TV. I also like to binge read series of books. And a lot of my series are 30, 40, 50 books. So it takes me a while to binge read them. But when I was younger and first started reading, God, when did I read my first novel? I think I was like 8, 9. I would go to the end because I wanted to make sure it had a happy ending first. So I'd read the end first, then I'd go back and read the book. Now I don't do that.
It makes me wish I was a goldfish sometimes, that I could just wander around a tank with like 5 seconds memory and just experience everything new all over again.
So, Ralph, what has been ongoing while we were cheekily across the Atlantic? I was across the Atlantic. Kay was just her side of the Atlantic.
Well, a lot of FOMO, to be honest. A lot of FOMO. I was keeping up with what was coming out of DC and watching all your posts and parties and experiencing a lot of fear of missing out, as they say. But it sounded like you guys had a great time. But as ever, the world kept turning here, even though everyone important in data protection was probably over in Washington.
Not everyone, clearly.
Actually, they were not. That was actually the funny thing, because a lot of the data protection authorities did not come across to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
There were only very few that we saw there, and I don't know whether it is the timing, the time of year, whether it's because it was just after Easter, whether people canceled their trip because of the Pope dying, or whether it's the U.S. politics at the moment. But there were certainly many regulators missing from the podium this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, the EDPS was not there because it's still in limbo who will be the next EDPS. And there's even after another vote, they are still stuck between two candidates. But also many of the other supervisory authorities were not there, at least not represented at the level of their president.
Agreed.
I know one supervisory authority that was there, not an EU supervisory authority anymore, but our good friend Jedwards from the ICO was there. Must have called it John Edwards.
It's not an Irish band. He is a supervisory authority.
Was there from the ICO and with his special pen. And we've seen a lot of activity in the media, certainly from the UK ICO. Few things. They've actually put on a display in Manchester of 40 years of the regulator, and therefore 40 different artifacts that display how data protection has changed throughout the year. So that's an interesting exhibit I might go and see. A few statements today, one on the British Library's 2023 ransomware attack, that they're not going to take any enforcement action, because even though the ransomware attack was carried out and successful, the British Library has been more than helpful and very transparent and open and trying to deal with it the best it can. No enforcement action there.
Fair enough, I would say.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that our ICO over here is also involved in not only freedom of information, but also environmental information disclosures. So some interesting conversations around transparency as the default position for water companies in terms of their environmental disclosure regime, in terms of what they're dumping into the rivers and streams over here. And as I said, John Edwards got out his pen at Washington, D.C., and had signed a memorandum of understanding or a declaration of cooperation with the CPA, the Californian Privacy Protection Agency. That's really interesting because we've seen some of these multilateral agreements or assistance agreements. We've seen them in Jersey and Guernsey and Bermuda and other elements around the world. But actually, it's nice to see the California Protection Agency being recognized by other regulators across the world and agreeing to share best practices and mutual cooperation arrangements. And California is obviously really important because that's where all the big tech giants are. So,
absolutely. I'm pretty sure we'll get some more news out of the California Authority later this year. I cannot imagine that they would not be investigating any of the big tech companies.
Right.
Speaking of that, one thing I do want to remind our listeners, especially those in Europe, is that Meta has decided to enable Meta AI in the European Union.
Congratulations.
And this is an opt-out model. So you have until the end of May to indicate that you do not want your pictures and your information to be part of Meta AI training the generative artificial intelligence. Deadline is the 27th of May, and you can opt out either via search on the website and to find the objection forms both for Instagram and Facebook if you do not want your data to be included. Or if you say, I don't care, I would still suggest that you opt out to protect the privacy of your friends and family and other people who may appear in your pictures.
Very true.
Yeah. Companies using AI training, I'm guessing under the legal basis of legitimate interests, I always find fascinating because I almost understand it if it was your first interaction with a business and then they were doing a legitimate interest assessment. But what we're talking on here is a secondary use. Yeah. We're talking data that's being uploaded in the 90s and however long ago you first started to use Meta Group products. And now we're talking about a second purpose. And basically what companies do is they send you a new privacy notice and say, hello, we're now using your data for a new purpose and we're doing it under legitimate interests, and so walk away whistling. I can't see that works personally.
No, I'm sure this is another Irish investigation that will be announced soon if it hasn't been announced already to Meta, because indeed there is no legitimate interest for further processing. That can only be done if there is a compatible use, which in this case there is not, because there was never any intention to train an algorithmic model when you first started using Facebook products, because generative AI did not exist yet. So the only way to do that is with an opt-in model with consent. This is not, or the only other option that I can see is that they don't use old data for that, but that they only want to use legitimate interest going forward. That would be allowed. That would be possible if they say we're going to, from now on, rely upon legitimate interest to also train our algorithms with all the future pictures. that he would be posting. I don't think that is the intention, but that is a reasoning that I could follow. And then with an opt-out where they say by default, we will accept your opt-out, that should be okay. But for historical data, relying on legitimate interest that starts now, for me, that's a no-go.
I agree, because for legitimate interest, their interest in using the data or processing the data and whatever they're going to do has to definitely not be overshadowed by the interest of the person whose data you're using. And how can you possibly measure that against the historical data that people have on Facebook?
Yeah, it'd be a very interesting assessment. The necessity and the proportionality elements of that assessment, I don't necessarily see would be necessary. So yeah, talking about AI, Paul, you also said you wanted to talk about AI for chatbots. It's interesting. I did a bit of an experiment the other week, actually. I saw a lot of adverts basically asking if you wanted an AI girlfriend, which I thought was quite interesting.
Do you?
And you said, yes, I do.
Yeah, why not?
Just for the sake of it, to test it and to be able to give fair, objective reviews.
Exactly. So I downloaded one. I had a look. These are apps whereby you can create an image that you want to talk to, give it a persona and a personality, and an AI will have a conversation with you. Now, actually, what I found quite interesting is I was trying to keep the conversation, how do I put it, PG-13, right?
Mm-hmm.
The AI chatbot kept trying to turn it X-rated. And I think that's learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I think what people are using these chatbots for, the chatbot is then taking in and then spitting back out. And therefore, what I found really interesting about the chatbot is no matter how I tried to keep the conversation on a family-friendly level, the AI chatbot kept trying to turn to more suggestive matters. And so I found that really fascinating, and perhaps an indictment on humanity about what people are using these AI chatbots for, and then the learned behavior that results.
Yeah, exactly. And that is also what regulators are warning for now around the world. Indeed, because these chatbots are, let's call it, going rogue, they do not have sufficient safeguards and guardrails to have children chat in a safe way with these bots. And I don't know which ones the regulators are currently going after. I haven't seen a list of names of apps that are currently being looked into. But one of the apps that is using this is Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that not everybody on Snapchat has the right intentions, and that there will be a lot of conversations on there and a lot of pictures on there, especially because they are disappearing, that are not PG-13, let alone suitable for children under the age of 13.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult situation, isn't it? As I've always said, technology is neither good or evil. It just is. It just makes the scale of the harm and the scale of the benefit greater. And it matters little to the technology what the content is. The same as encryption protects the good and the bad alike. But it matters little to the technology what the content is. And therefore, you have to rely on either automated review or human review.
Mm-hmm.
Now, human review is nasty because then you have individuals who suffer harm because they are having to review some quite difficult and nasty material.
Plus almost impossible given the volume.
That is
Right.
impossible given the volume. So then you have to have AI or automated review of material, and then you're going to get a lot of false positives. We can't tell the difference between horrible child exploitation and grandparents bathing their grandchildren in the bath. It's one of the objections I had to the EU proposal to monitor for child sexual abuse material, because the false positives, or yes, I know we want to capture horrible people doing horrible things, but the false positives would lead to a lot of accusations of some very innocent people. And I don't think the technology is going to be able to tell the difference. It's a different situation.
When you go back and look out for it, so it's always been something that we've been concerned about, but Common Sense Media, which focuses on children online safety and digital safety, chartered a research program with Stanford, and they looked at 3 particular chatbots. They were Character AI, Nomi, and Replica. So they looked at those. And so this Stanford research came out and said that it is not good for children. It is not good for their mental health. They can assume a range of personas, personality traits. They don't have guardrails around them. They easily produce, this is quoting them now, they easily produce harmful responses, including sexual misconduct, stereotypes, and dangerous advice that, if followed, could have life-threatening or deadly real-world impact for teens and other vulnerable people. Some of the particulars thing that had happened is if the child made a racist comment or a racist joke, the AI companion would say, "Oh, that was funny. Haha, you should tell more stories like that." There was another one, this lady, her son committed suicide last year after he had a romantic AI partner and then got dejected somehow. And she filed a lawsuit in California. So she has a bill proposed in California. There's a lot of groups that oppose this bill. Says, we get it, and we've talked about this before. Laws happen when terrible things happen. That's when everybody gets outraged and come in and passes a law to address that thing. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. And so there are groups saying that we get the reason why you want to do this, but the law as it is written is not actually a good thing. And so we'll see how that turns out in California, if the law gets passed or not. But there were some interesting things that they do. They have age gates, which we are notoriously fallible. Content safeguards, again, notoriously fallible. And then sometimes children don't know that who they're really talking to isn't a real person. You can explain a fake person or imaginary friend to them until you turn blue. But are they really going to understand that this is a computer program that is trained to make you happy? So it will agree with everything you say. My friends say I'm fat. Yes, you are. You're horribly fat. Really? The AI does not have empathy. It is not a human.
No, that's true. At the same time, there are lots of children who have imaginary friends throughout their childhood in the non-digital manner, right? Somebody who they think they talk to and who they consider really to be a friend. That's a known phenomenon.
You're triggering me. I cried like a baby during Inside Out. Spoiler.
And the difference there, which is very clear to our readers, is that imaginary friends, unless they are true spirits that are visiting someone, and I do not have the authority to say that can't happen, come from the person, come from the child. What the imaginary friend is saying is, what was the thing, the big movie If, that was around imaginary friends, and when you no longer have them, you get discarded and they get depressed, and you have to have more children believe in their imaginary friends in order for them to survive. I could only watch about half of that movie, that I had to stop. So we're going to stop right there. But it comes from the child, right? It's not this
True.
relatively omniscient technology that is programmed to agree with the child, and what the child may be saying is very negative.
It's not as nefarious. That's certainly true.
Yeah, exactly. No empathy. And they're not trained to recognize any type of mental health issue that might be going on with the child. Like they might trigger if the child says a certain thing, and then that might call the cops or something like that. There's nothing there. And we can't rely on parents to know how to protect their children in these instances, because there's a lot of adults that don't understand this. There's a lot of adults with their AI friends too, and they like their AI friends. So what's bad for my child?
And not even friends, but also AI therapists and all of that. That also now is something that's being provided. So yeah, be careful there, I think, is the main message that
takeaway
we give. And as somebody, I forgot if you're listening, I'm so sorry for not remembering your name, but somebody on LinkedIn pointed out on all these Studio Ghibli images that are now being generated by ChatGPT, that everybody using that is also giving OpenAI a wealth of new data to train from by sharing all of their pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. The action figures is the latest.
Indeed, the action figures, but that's still fairly innocent to share your headshot, but the sharing your deepest thoughts and worries and concerns with an AI therapist could be a lot more impactful when you share that with an AI without being fully aware of the consequences.
Yeah, true. Very true. All right. I know we have about 15 minutes of IAPP to add to this, so I'm trying to be cognizant of the time. Just to throw some other things that y'all don't forget, the Department of Justice in the U.S. rules on cross-border data have now gone into effect. So if you did not pay attention to that, everybody seems to think it's for data brokers. Mass export, I think, is 1,000. So look at what you consider this may be a data broker or mass export. It's 1,000 qualifies as mass export.
What,
So
huge?
go look at that one if you hadn't.
Now, true, it only applies to certain countries, those deemed dangerous countries. But there you go.
State news, we're still ranking up on some. Utah's Consumer Privacy Act has been amended to include correct. Iowa is the only state that doesn't have the right to correct your data, which I always thought was a stupid right anyway, because most companies want the right data regardless. NetChoice's ongoing litigation in other states. Nebraska's age-appropriate design code has been placed on its final reading. Arkansas's COPPA 2.0 bill was signed into law, should take in effect July of next year. Asia Pacific, Hong Kong passed its cybersecurity law. Indonesia enacted new regulations for child service. South Korea amended its PIPA for domestic agents of foreign countries, and Thailand finalized new rules on cross-border. This is a monthly summary, y'all. Forgive me. Just rattling them out. AI developments, I think we've talked about enough. And then, of course, what they call the privacy scandals, which we already talked about. DeepSeek, 23andMe, and Meta. I like that those are privacy scandals.
Meta is always a
Scandal.
privacy scandal. Just one question I forgot to ask, Kate. What is it like for you being subject to Meta AI training and not having the opt-out available?
It's interesting that I don't really go Facebook anymore. I post my Wordle, and that's about it. But I do go on to Engage because, again, I have a pageant coming up and they want the social media presence or whatever. And I'm being decidedly about that. So, yeah, the fact that I don't have a choice, I can go in and check my privacy settings, which I've done to try not to contribute. There's no choice.
One of the things I've always wanted to see challenged is actually Article 26, privacy by default.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things it says at the end of privacy by default, it says personal data shall not be made available without the intervention of the data subject to an indefinite number of people. So basically what that's saying is when you first log into your system, everything should be closed and it'd be up to you to open it. That's safer than having everything as being open and it being up to you to close it. And so when I think about data protection settings, and you were just saying, I must go through my data protection settings and check. I always think that must be really, how does social media get away with that? Because nearly all social media is everything is open and it's up to you to go through some complex settings and close it. That's not privacy by default.
No, it's really not.
And not just social media, also all the FIPS and all of those, where by default information is shared anybody in the world.
For regulators listening, easy pickings.
I know that there are regulators listening because multiple regulators that were in DC actually came up to us to say that they were listening. We do know that they exist. So yes, more from DC coming now, where Kay and I wrap up after the closing session. And also in future episodes, we have one more full episode from DC that we recorded on site. And we have a few guests that we have secured that we will reach out to in the coming weeks to set up some interviews.
It was all about the people, right, Paul? There were some really cool people that we met that we plan to have on the podcast.
It was all about the people. And on that note, let's go back to Washington.
Yeah, baby.
So welcome to day 2 of the IAPP Global Privacy Summit. We are just wrapping up the conference. It's closing down. The final
open session
is currently ongoing, but we decided to skip out to catch you up on what has been happening on the past day and in the past day and a half, just to make sure that we get everything recorded before we are kicked out of the venue.
Yeah.
Okay, how has your conference been?
I feel weird this conference. That I'm peopled out or I'm conferenced out. People just don't seem to have the air of excitement this time. And I don't think it's IAPP's fault. You and I were in some good sessions. There's been some good sessions, but just, it's exhausting. I'm sorry. I do like individuals. I don't like lots of people. I don't think that's, like I said, I don't think I'm peopled out or conferenced out. It's just, where's the excitement? Where's the vibe? I'm not seeing it. Are you?
No, not really. I think the vibe is very different. I skipped a year. I was here 2 years ago when the big buzz was all about Gen AI, with OpenAI having just released ChatGPT to the public a couple of weeks ahead of the summit. And all the conversations were about generative AI and how things were changing. And
which I avoided every single one of those sessions.
At the time, I did not. I have since, but that was for me the very first time I was confronted with Gen AI in such a way. And I thought, oh, this is going to be important and I need to bring this back home to my colleagues. And I don't have the feel that has happened this week.
Yeah.
There is not the big overarching thing that everybody is talking about, that everybody should know about. I did the part on robotics, so to see how that would develop. We know that there are things on agentic AI coming up and that 2025 is supposed to be the year of agentic AI. So that is all developing. No, I agree. The big excitement probably is not there. That's sad.
Do you think part of it is the politics here in the U.S. right now? Because we're not seeing as many government people that we normally have here.
We don't see a lot of Europeans.
Don't have a lot of Europeans here. And then every day you're hit with more and more news of other things happening. And I wonder if it's the political environment that's just bringing people a little down right now.
It could be. I'm not so sure. I also have the feeling that the conference is slightly smaller than it used to be in recent years, both when you look at the number of vendors that are exhibiting, but also just the volume of people walking around or not walking around.
But there's a lot of people who are here that aren't paid for the conference. They're just hanging out in the adjacent spaces, so that's cool.
You and I have both done that in the past as well.
Yes.
Made a deliberate decision for this year to go into the conference.
Yes.
And we'll see what we'll do for Brussels. But putting all of that aside, it had an amazing week because it was so nice to catch up with a lot of former colleagues from Nymity, from TrustArc.
Yeah.
See some of my former customers.
The TrustArc party last night was fabulous.
The TrustArc party was fabulous. The LGBTQ Allies party was fabulous.
Even though I didn't dress up.
A very big shout out to the organizers, to Ron and Koban and Caitlin and all the others who are preparing that, because they did an amazing job again. By now raised over $1 million for the LGBT charities that they are working for and working with, including LGBT Tech, which I think, especially in these days where individual rights of minorities are so much under pressure, not just here in the US, but all around the world. And we've also seen in the UK the ruling that trans women are, according to the law, not to be qualified as women. And I agree with what was said during the party last night. We are here to fight for everybody's personal rights, personal data, for their privacy, for their data protection. And that also includes these minorities. So I think it's very important that they set up this party, but also made it into such a big success that it's now part of the official conference agenda.
Yeah, I love it. I really do. And the people, I have to say that the people we have run into, met new, rekindled relationships has been phenomenal. This is the one thing. Oh, squirrel moment.
This is the one thing.
This is the one thing. So it's been really interesting. So yesterday, my favorite session was the Indigenous privacy session, which privacy is such a small slice of everything they're doing overall, but that was fabulous. I've met several people from Africa that are very active. One of them, Ngizi, wants to come onto our podcast. We met people at the TrustArc party, at the LGBTQ party, just walking in the hallways. The people seem to be the exciting part.
Yes, I agree.
Conference.
And that is also as expected, right? That is also why I'm here and why I came.
Right, exactly, in person.
To catch up with a lot of these people and to make sure that we could have those conversations.
Well, and seeing Dan Solab, which how have we not had him on the podcast?
We haven't.
And Ben Siegel, who has been on the podcast talking about gaming, would like to have him back on. There's been major changes in the past 5 years in that realm. Just, the people have been fantastic.
So we just had a closing session with the people from OpenAI, including Sam Altman, who is the CEO and founder of OpenAI, and the other person, Alex Blania, CEO and co-founder from Tools for Humanity, who is partnering with OpenAI on a lot of the things. They've been talking about Gen AI, about ChatGPT, about World, which previously was WorldCoin, the one where you provide your biometrics and then you get paid some.
Yes.
What did you make of the panel or the discussion?
The discussion, which was led by Boyana Bellamy from Sipple, so that was really good. She did an amazing job with that. Sam, of course, was not here in person. He was at home. They said his new family responsibilities. Apparently, he just had a baby. So that was awesome. But funny enough, leading up into this, people were saying they didn't know if he'd even show up in person. And that was interesting. And he did not show up in person.
But he did show up.
But one of the things that he said, if I combine that with what Alex said, is Sam said, there's coming a time, and the time might be here now, when people really do want to know that they're interacting with a human online and not with a bot. And they're sharing very intimate details sometimes with the bot. So it might be a time now that people need that validation that you're interacting with a human. However, you don't need that human's identity. And then Alex followed that pretty soon with biometrics is the differentiating factor. It's going to come down to biometrics is the only thing that's going to prove it. With all the brouhaha over biometrics and facial recognition technology and getting fingerprints and iris scans and everything, how do they plan to do that while protecting the person's identification? Because most of the privacy laws that now include biometrics as part of sensitive data, they do specify biometrics for the purpose of identifying a person.
Yeah.
So is that identifying that they are a person or identifying who they are?
From a data protection point of view, it doesn't matter. And that was my big issue with this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And I have a deep respect for Bojana, but I think she should have pressed them here a little bit more because they were only talking about privacy, but they were not talking about data protection. And if you start collecting all of these personal data, personal information with biometrics, and especially given that this is all on mobile devices, it would probably be facial scans and facial recognition technology that should be used. I think there is no way they would be able to do that at the scale that they imagine it and still be compliant with legislation. And I know that here in the US, you've picked up on the story in Politico that the European Union will want to reform the GDPR and that maybe the number of obligations will go down. Yes, it might be, but that is only for the administrative burden part of the legislation. It is not that we are going to fundamentally overhaul our fundamental right to data protection. That's also been made very clear by the European Commission. In that perspective, I think the only message I can give to Sam Altman is dream on. And I'm sorry for being so harsh, but that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we tend to avoid data protection here in the U.S. And frankly, a lot of people don't understand the difference between data protection and privacy. They believe that they are interchangeable because we do not have a fundamental right of privacy or data protection.
No, that is true. But go back to the ubiquitously quoted Warren and Brandeis. They came by yesterday during one of the general sessions
not Warren
as well.
and Brandeis.
Not them in person, you mean? No, their article came by. But the right to privacy by them is defined as the right to be let alone, which, of course, is a very different right than ensuring that your personal data at all times are handled in a proper manner. Because who knew about personal data in the 1890s and how it would all work?
And that's interesting because that reminds me of the conversation yesterday with the Indigenous panel. Is that no, they don't have a word for privacy, but they have the concepts that protect the privacy and protect the data.
Yeah. Don't give away the full episode.
I'm not going to give away the full episode.
This is the teaser, right?
This is the teaser.
There is a full episode coming with the panelists from the Indigenous Privacy Panel. It will be out in the course of May, so watch out for that.
So it will be. But so Jeffrey Ding actually was the second keynote in the open session today, and he is an assistant professor of political science at George Washington University, and he published a book, Technology and the Rise of Great Powers. And so they had him on. That was interesting.
It was, but it also felt very much like an academic lecture, including the formatting of his slides, which was very academic. But I did like how he draws a relationship between the Industrial Revolution and the developments you saw at the time, the economic growth in the interbellum era, and now the new digital revolution that we are facing.
Informatization, I think, is what he called it on that. It was interesting. I can't say that word just like I can't say operational.
Interoperability?
Operationalization. Shush. Y'all know I can't say that word. That's my weakness.
This is the new word that Kay learned, by the way, this week. Shush.
Yeah, exactly. But I did actually like his visual. So the visual is one that we've seen in media a lot, where it's a chessboard and it's China versus the U.S. and they're the kings and they're colored with the little flags. And he says this is a very popular visual that people are using to say who's going to win the technology war. But as he said, in chess, the kings can't do anything to each other. They're face to face. So it actually does
They
carry,
can never be face to face on the chessboard.
right.
No.
It carries very much a nuanced, which we all learned this from the Gambit, but it carries a nuanced thing that, yeah, there's a war going on. And yes, they're in competition, but they can't do anything to each other.
No, what surprised me here didn't surprise me because it's the U.S., but you saw the U.S. and you showed China.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of the world? There is more than
doesn't
2 countries
exist.
in the world.
No, really?
And there is also in Europe, there is a lot of happening with AI. Yes, the US is the front runner. Yes, China is the second runner, but that doesn't mean that
There's
Europe
not
should
Great
just
Britain
be
or
guarded. Britain is doing a lot of stuff. France is doing a lot of stuff. Other countries in
Malaysia,
Europe are doing a lot
Singapore,
of stuff.
Japan.
Indeed. So there is a lot more ongoing.
I don't
Yeah.
think he likes our laser focused viewpoint here.
No, I don't
That we-
think so.
yeah.
Let's think in general that is happening.
Yeah.
So that is true. The US tends to forget that there is a rest of the world outside of the borders of the 50 states.
Really? No, I have to agree with that. But to be honest, if you think about the U.S. and China, they're both in the news for pretty much the same thing, right? Doing bad things.
No, those are your words.
Yeah, those are my words. And I don't mean the political, by the way. I'm going to caveat that, y'all. I also mean what the companies are doing. See American companies that are getting in so much trouble around us, the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as we said in our previous episode, I think to an extent that is also part of companies not understanding maybe enough the legislations in other jurisdictions and that they are trying to make a best effort, whereas in others they are deliberately
ignoring it. Yeah, that's true. And it takes a little while and a lot of effort to understand. We've never hidden that privacy is very complex. Data protection is very complex. Cybersecurity law is very complex. And it really does take immersing yourself in it to learn what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And companies have to make that investment to get the right people that do it. We were just talking to a lot of people that are saying there's a ton of privacy jobs open right now in the U.S. A lot. Every day, there's just a lot and a lot. Don't think they're all necessarily looking for what the job description says they're looking for.
But also there, I don't think the US is unique.
No,
I think
that's
there are
true.
lots of companies that say, okay, we need somebody to be responsible for privacy and data protection. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Someone's name to put on the form.
Exactly. And if you want to hear more about that, shameless plug, but I was a guest on Grumpy GDPR recently
Nice.
with Ria. And we spoke about the Norwegian decision in the Telenor case about the role of the DPO, the independence of the DPO. So if you want to hear more about that, you should listen to Grumpy GDPR as well.
You should. It's an excellent case. To get back to this, there's a few more sessions to go this afternoon. I'm not going to be in any. I'm actually doing a webinar. We're going to go see people for lunch and come back. But I have to say that the few sessions I went to, I enjoyed.
I did too. A very forward-looking panel about how we are continuously developing privacy and data protection around the world and looking ahead at the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Impossible to predict, obviously.
Right. Where are we going to be in 10
The only
years?
thing we
have
know
no clue.
is that it will be uncertain going forward.
Yeah.
But
And we'll be here.
And we'll try to be here.
Yeah, we'll be here. I say that. I need to knock on wood, right?
Yes. So let's wrap up
Okay.
GPS 25 for now. We have made some agreements with people for follow-up conversations at a later date. This will be a gift that keeps on giving.
But it has been fun to see the engagement of people with us in the podcast.
Absolutely.
It's been, and to hang out with TrustArt. By the way, they had laminated NIMIDI accountability frameworks, people.
Yeah, they're in my suitcase.
If you didn't get one, go find one. We're almost out of the Privacy Avenger stickers. I am out of the Wicked stickers. And I bought double of the logo stickers, so we're not out of those. Paul brought stroopwafels, the miniature bite-sized ones that people are going gaga over.
Quite a few mints. And also the mints are still in stock, so you'll find them at future events as well.
For the next 10 years, he bought mints, people. That'll close us out.
That was Serious Privacy.
This wraps up our podcast for this week. Please do share the episode with your friends and colleagues because we love to get more listeners. And join the conversation on LinkedIn or on Blue Sky. You'll find us under Serious Privacy on both platforms. You'll find Kay as Heart of Privacy, Ralph as IGR O'Brien, and myself as Europol B. Until next week, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.